Good day, class. I am teacher April, and today we will going to discuss another lesson. So without further ado, let's start. Well, I have here a brief question that requires you to have a brief answer. Can you think of an element that is often referred to as a building block of life? With that in mind, do you have any guesses, class? It is all about the carbon element. Today, we will going to discuss the carbon atoms. But before we proceed to our proper discussion, let's first take a look at our learning objectives. This will guide us through what we aim to achieve today's lesson. First, at the end of the lesson, we should be able to analyze the relationship between the structure of the carbon atom and the types of bond it forms. Second, construct an illustration of carbon atoms showing single, double, and triple bonds. Third, show appreciation for the unique properties of the carbon by applying its uses and importance in both living and non-living things. Is our learning objective clear, class? With that, let's proceed to our proper discussion by defining carbon first. As said here, carbon is considered as a non-metallic element because it is considered as an organic compound that tends to form covalent bond. It is also said here that it belongs to the group 4A of the periodic table. You can check your periodic table to confirm if carbon is indeed located at a group 4A. Why do we say so that carbon is belong to the group 4A of the periodic table? Because it has 4 valence electron or 4 electron in their outer shell. To help you visualize where carbon is located in the periodic table, in case you don't have one, we have here a picture. Carbon belongs to the group 4A, also known as a carbon group. This group also includes elements like silicon, germanium, tin, and lead. Now, let's proceed to our next slide. Let's take a look at the structure of this carbon atom. Take a little observation about this one. It is said that it is half-filled outermost shell with 4 valence electron. Also, it is considered as a relatively small atom with 6 electrons distributed and only 2 energy levels. It only means that there are 6 electrons orbiting around the nucleus and 2 energy level of the carbon element. In the inner shell, as you can see, it has 2 electrons, and in the outer shell, it has 4 electrons. So all in all, it has 6 electrons orbiting the energy level of the carbon atoms. So why do we have 4 electrons in the outermost shell? It is because they are responsible for bonding with other carbon atoms, in which this bonds allows carbon to form new compounds by combining with other elements. And that process is called bonding. And with that, in the next slide, we have the types of carbon bonds. And here, we have single bond, double bond, and the triple bond, where single bond formed when 2 atoms share 1 pair of electrons representing 1 dash in its illustration. While on the double bond, it is formed when 2 atoms share 2 pair of electrons representing 2 dash between 2 carbon. In the triple bond, it formed when 2 atoms share 3 pairs of electrons representing 3 dash between 2 carbons. With that, based on the illustration, can you guess what type of carbon bond is the most strongest? It is the triple bond because it has a great number of shared electrons, making the bond more difficult to break. How about the bond that is weakest? It is the single bond because it only shares 1 pair of electrons. But remember, even though single bonds are weaker, they are still very stable and are found in many important molecules. Another question, which bond do you think is the longest? It is obviously the single bond because the atoms are not pulled as close together as in the double or triple bond. Do you now get it, class? With that, let's take a look at another unique bonding patterns of carbon. First, carbon forms covalent bonding patterns. So when we talk about covalent bonding patterns, we're referring to the process where atoms like carbon shared electrons with other atoms to form bonds. In the illustration provided, we can see a clear example of this. The carbon atom shared one pair of electron with each of the 4 hydrogen atoms, forming a bond. This is how carbon can bond with other elements to create stable molecules. Second, carbon atoms can form stable and long chain. It means that carbon atom can be connected in a long line, forming a stable compound. Carbon atom can bond to each other in a long chain, and this chain can be straight or branch. Now, let's have the third one of the 4 unique bonding patterns of carbon, in which carbon can form branch or ring formation. In carbon bonding patterns, not only can carbon form straight chains, but it can also create branch chain or even ring structures, kind of like a shape of a diamond. Now, we are down with the last unique bonding patterns of carbon, the 4 known allotropes of carbon. When we say allotropes, it is the different forms of the same element. And here, carbon atoms are arranged in different ways. In the case of carbon, it has several allotropes, which with its own unique properties. In here, we have diamond, graphite, amorphous carbon, and fluorine. But first, let's have the diamond. As said here, it is arranged as each atom is bonded to 4 other carbon atoms in a symmetrical tetrahedral patterns. When we say tetrahedral pattern, it creates a 3-dimensional lattice structure where each carbon atom shared electrons with 4 neighboring carbon atoms. This forms a very rigid network, and because the bonds are so strong, it requires a lot of energy to break them. Now, let's proceed with carbon in its graphite form. As stated here, carbon atoms are arranged in a flat hexagonal lattice and layered in sheets. It is considered as a very weak bond. Can you guess why the bond between the layers are considered weak? The layers in a graphite can slide past each other easily. That is why graphite feels slippery. Like when you use a pencil. Just so you know, pencils are actually made of carbon in the form of graphite. With that, let's move on into the third allotropes of carbon, which is the amorphous carbon. As said here, it has no predictable pattern or arrangement. Amorphous carbon doesn't have a predictable arrangement of atoms like diamond or graphite. The atoms are arranged random or disordered pattern, where it can be described as brittle since it has less structure and not organized unlike other compounds. For the information of everyone, it is often found in forms like charcoal. Now, let's move on into the last allotrope of carbon, which is the fluorine. As said here, carbon atoms arranged in a closed globe cage. It looks like a soccer ball or some kind of ball shape with a lot of smaller hexagons and pentagons in it. And here, its carbon atom is bonded with 3 other carbon atoms, just like in graphite. But the arrangement of carbon forms a 3-dimensional shape instead of flat layers. And that's all for our 4 allotropes of carbon. To have a recap, first, we have the diamond. Second, the graphite. And third, we have the amorphous carbon. And lastly, we have the fluorine, where we have some examples of where carbon can be found. In this slide, we have the diamond, pencil, and coal as example of carbon in different forms. Diamond, graphite in pencil, and amorphous carbon in coal. In addition to those, in the next slide, we have other examples listed here, such as dolomite and artificial sand, both of which contain carbon. Organic matter in soil also contains carbon, as well as many household items like shampoo, detergent, and lotion. And of course, living organisms, including us humans, are made up of carbons. In fact, about 18% of our body weight is made up of carbon. This carbon comes from the food we consume, like protein, carbohydrates, and fats, and even from the DNA in our cells. Now, with all of the information we've discussed today, do you have any clarification or question, class? If yes, leave a question or the statement in the comment section. Without further ado, let's end this session. Thank you for listening and have a good day.